Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World episode 195. I'm your host John Jordan. Don't forget to check out my daily email about blockchain gaming. You can find that at gamestx.substack.com. In today's episode I'm talking to Marco van den Heuvel, who is one of the co-founders at Merit Circle. So like many companies, Merit Circle started out breeding Axie Infinity NFTs, but unlike many other companies, quite quickly moved to become a sort of more gaming investment DAO, so focused on investing in other Web3 games. Also did a bit of games work itself before deciding it was going to make a play into infrastructure. So I guess it's best known now for the Beam infrastructure. So we talk about that decision making and how it sort of transitioned, and also sort of the future of Beam. So there is the Beam Ventures fund out of Abu Dhabi, which is I guess more of a institutional investment fund compared to the DAO investment fund, and we also talk about some of the investments that Merit Circle has made when it comes to AI and Marco's thoughts around that. So a good sort of potted history of the last sort of 7 years of trends in the blockchain gaming sector. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, but on with the show. Hello everybody and welcome to the show. Very pleased I've got Marco from Merit Circle / Beam. We'll find out which one we should call you, but how's it going, Marco? Yeah. Good to have you on.
Good, thanks for the invitation, John. Good to be here.
Cool. So we're gonna sort of go back in time and sort of find out. So we're going to sort of tweeze out the journey of this sort of organisation, which has grown to sort of many different facets, which I think is will come across as quite a good reflection of what's going on in blockchain gaming over the last few years. So that'll be sort of a good arc for us. But let's find out a bit more about yourself before you sort of got involved in what was then Merit Circle. So what's a bit about the background? You know, how did you get into sort of gaming cryptos?
It's been, I just, the whole journey from Merit Circle to Beam has been quite a journey. I think the same counts for my personal journey when it comes to crypto.
Yeah.
So I got into Bitcoin early 2017. So
okay.
Right before I would say one of the bigger bull runs back then.
Yeah.
And when learning about Bitcoin, I just got fascinated. I've always been, a gamer myself. And I always say as a gamer, you tend to understand digital economies.
Yeah.
And when learning about Bitcoin, it just felt similar. It clicked, And I think when that obviously translated to also learning about Ethereum and about smart contracts, and then early, crypto kitties and gaming, I got more and more involved into the space. Early 2018, I moved to San Francisco for my studies, study abroad, basically semester. And during the studies, I found myself, I would say, more at blockchain conferences than in school already, because I felt like, this is a massive opportunity. And it was a point where I'd already established quite, a network in Web3. And a lot of the studios or companies, they were actually located in California. And so that was kind of the start of my first company as well, where it was in community management and helping basically startups educate their users on what is it that we're actually building? What is actually that our token is going to be used for, etc. And that all the way, until 2021, when Merit Circle started, when Axie Infinity blew up and Web3 gaming really started to make moves. That journey continued, but then on the gaming side, rather than just, I would say all kind of Web3 startups.
Okay.
We're still here, still, going strong, and I'm very excited about everything that's happening going into 2025. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell on a personal level.
Can just go back a little bit. You sort of went quite seamlessly to I was over in San Francisco for my studies, and then you sort of started a company. I mean, we always sort of had that entrepreneurial sort of idea.
Never.
So that was very seamless for you just to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It was. So when I got into crypto, Telegram is obviously massive in crypto with the communities. I started joining groups. I saw people starting to ask questions, about white papers, because as people actually still read white papers back then. Now they tend to just buy meme coins, but back then people would read white papers. And I was like, I want to learn a lot about this myself as well. So why don't I just help answering those questions of those different people? And at some point there were, like I said, startups that reached out to me and they said, hey, we're seeing you do this in different groups. Is this something that you could do for us perhaps? And that's how that whole entrepreneurial side, fueled by also, the American entrepreneurial spirit, where I saw young people start businesses. I figured, why not? I did continue to finish my studies, because I do, still believe that, okay, it's good to have a good foundation and you learn from that as well. But that entrepreneurial side just kind of smoothly transitioned into, one business to, well, now Beam, basically.
Mm-hmm. And I guess crypto has that very natively, I guess, because it has these sort of tokens which have value, and it's not like, I mean, maybe you did start a proper company in terms of having a, setting up with the government or whatever, but you can have these sort of companies or KOLs or whatever you want to call these. These things are almost like set up organically and go through waves and shut down again, and I mean, it's just almost like part of the sort of system, isn't it?
It is a lot of, so if we take this very stupidly back to gaming, you have the whole creator economy and, user-generated content. Web3 very much felt me like that to me because, like you say, naturally you could find yourself coming to the point where, oh wow, this hobby actually turns out way bigger than, anticipated, to the point where you do have a registered business and you do start to go, professionally, etc. With, Merit Circle and Beam, beforehand, well, initially started out as a hobby, but when we, changed the name to Merit Circle, we went larger. That obviously was with business intent in mind, which is different from, way in the beginning when, like I said, you just go from a community member to doing this for different studios yourselves. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dig into the Axie Infinity, which I guess was was a prime example of that, because not only was it this massive game, still unfortunately the biggest blockchain game in terms of its peak audience, not been overcome yet, but obviously, so there was that part of it, and then lots of people sort of just on an individual level, I guess, like we were just discussing, just sort of like breeding Axies, and all these assets became very valuable, so everyone sort of on their own level sort of doing that. But I guess actually just before then we had sort of YGG sort of kicking off, so they were a bit, maybe a bit earlier. I don't know how you fit in with their timing, but obviously we had that sort of, during that 6 month period we had a lot of what were then called guilds, and so was that the sort of idea with Merit Circle? I think that's what you were starting doing. But
it started as a guild. I was actually pretty early in Axie Infinity, and I was one of the main breeders when it came to the planned characters. Okay. And I think if you're not familiar with Axie Infinity, you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Which is always funny when you talk with people about this. But that actually got to the point where I started selling those Axies to guilds when the whole economy picked up again. And when at some point I've realized, hey, there's actually a massive growth curve here, I figured, well, why don't I start using those Axies for myself? Why don't I start kind of a guild-like, guild, yeah. So that happened. We were, very early to scale there. We scaled very aggressively, and that's when it turned, from hobby into something more serious, I would say. But we also saw the opportunity beyond just Axie Infinity. You had the Lufian that was making waves. You had a Star Atlas that became popular. There was this promise of, AAA studios that were going to build massive titles, and everyone having, that's kind of what fueled the surge, right, in Web3 gaming back in 2021. Merit Circle actually started, with the token too, right at the peak of Bitcoin 69. Well, I think Bitcoin was 64K, went to 69 and went back down. So we actually had the worst moment to start, I would say, with the pivot to, actually Merit Circle. But, treasury-wise, it came right at the perfect moment. Community-wise, it came right at the perfect moment. So it really fueled, what is still here today. Treasury survived really well during the bear market, and that just got us to the point where now we think bigger than, we were actually one of the first guilds, I would say, that actually started scaling off in Axie Infinity in different games, play to earn, because we also realized, okay, there's this massive growth curve, but it relies on continuous demand, and otherwise it's a card house that could fall very quickly. But we did see an opportunity in Web3 rather than, play to earn. So that's where we continued to pave ways, be it on the investment side, be it on working with different studios, and kind of the natural fit that then started clicking there was to also build infra. And fast forward to now with Beam, it's infra. There's still the treasury side, and we announced the Beam L1 coming up. We announced the Beam Venture Fund coming up in Abu Dhabi. We announced Beam AI, where we also want to start taking steps into AI, which is both a natural fit for gaming, but also a way for us to expand our activities beyond just gaming, since Web3 gaming is still somewhat experimental, if we're brutally honest, and you don't want to just rely on that. So there were just those natural flows, natural pivots and transitions into where we are today. But yeah, it all started where Axie Infinity got a big boom.
Okay, I'm going to unpick some of that sort of timeline now, because again, this is very much me from the outside sort of looking in, and obviously there was just loads of stuff going on then, and loads of guilds started, and loads of people were, there's even within guilds there were sort of different sort of types of sort of specific sort of jobs they were doing and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. But it did seem to me from the outside that Merit Circle was one that quite quickly moved away from just being on Axie, and as you say, there were these other games, but nothing ever had the sort of the trajectory and the sort of volume of Axie. So, and obviously that proved to be sort of quite smart, because the Axie boom was very, over a period of sort of, maybe 6-7 months at most, but quite sort of compressed. And there were still sort of guilds launching after sort of Axie was sort of, not dead, but after that sort of boom had happened. So, how much of that was sort of lucky, or how much was that sort of you thinking through that you don't want to have all your sort of eggs in the Axie basket? And then also you seem to be, maybe you're doing stuff more publicly than other guilds, but you seem to move into that. I don't know whether you said I think you did say you're an investment DAO. That sort of seemed to come quite quickly into that sort of in that sort of 2021, 2022 period. So
yeah, it's a good question. And what is luck? I believe that luck is a big factor when it comes to a lot of things in life. Life's in the small decisions is what people always say. Be it where, like I said, we were lucky to have started this when Bitcoin was 64K. I think Illuvium's token was trading at like 2K. YGT was booming. Time-wise to launch was perfect. But 2 weeks later, crypto felt like it was in a gutter, and Bitcoin went down significantly. Other altcoins went down significantly. So, launch timing was lucky, but to scale, obviously not lucky. I think when it comes to scaling down in Axie, it is a lot about following the numbers, and that is not necessarily luck. I think that if you are such an active breeder in the environment and you see sales slowing down, you see kind of a very concentrated number of parties actually buying the Axies, whereas the majority is starting to sell or not buy anymore, and kind of see liquidity slowly dry up. Even though you haven't reached the peak yet, you do see that, okay, we have a really large portfolio here in the Axie ecosystem. It naturally doesn't make sense for us to devote more money towards it, because that would be just putting more eggs in one basket. It does start to make sense to scale down, and we didn't scale down 100%, but we scaled down very rapidly, very aggressively, and also with eyes on wanting to, do the same model in Illuvium and Star Atlas. Well, quite frankly, those games hadn't launched yet, so we hadn't committed anything financially there yet, given there was no game to play. In our backgrounds, we've been, active, and my other two co-founders too, we've been active in the crypto industry for years. They've been in it longer than I have, and they've been actively investing in early stages of projects as well, be it seed rounds, be it etc. And so that's naturally made sense as well when you have a large treasury and you feel like, okay, we do want to become a big player in Web3 gaming, we do want to become this big player when it comes to pushing this forward as well, because you believe that there is generally something here, and I still do. But do it in a way that makes sense and is sustainable. And that's why that whole, why that made sense. And I think to go back to the luck factor as well, the treasury survived one of the most brutal bear markets at the time, came out pretty strong, and since has increased. Obviously we're not in too great of a market sentiment right now, but generally speaking, it's been going pretty well. And I think partially, again, that comes down to luck. Partially also, we've experienced things like FTX, like, UST, Luna. There were all those moments where things could have gone really wrong, but because you're actively monitoring everything and managing, waves, you manage to kind of savor that treasury, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, looking back, that you sort of invested too aggressively? Because one of the things I really like about you guys is you have a lot of your investments are sort of transparent. You do a quarterly sort of treasury report and all that sort of stuff. And it is sort of interesting looking back at some of these projects. We even someone like me who's followed it, every day for all these years, you can't even, did I ever know that game? So obviously you have your hits and your misses, but I guess was that just sort of part of the sort of ether at the time, where you just sort of think, in the situation, we don't really know what's going to be a hit and what isn't, so we just sort of go broadly rather than going, let's do half the investments and double the investments into those things we think are higher profile.
I wouldn't say it was necessarily spray and pray, but early on, when the market was booming so much and Web3 gaming was growing so rapidly, you could look at investments from two standpoints. You could look at it from, okay, this is going to be this massive title that's going to take crypto game to the masses. It's really going to take off. Or it could be this pro studio that is going to have a good launch, is going to do fine, and during this journey, you can start to take out profits and deploy that elsewhere. Because you also don't want to be sitting on a treasury that is solely in stable coins, because then people will be like, well, what are you doing, right? You also want to establish a brand. You want to become a name in the industry where people know, hey, this is, back then Merit Circle, they have a treasury that is devoted towards making Web3 gaming grow, etc. Hindsight, would we love to have done things differently? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very transparent, be it on the community side, be it on the treasury side, be it on the way that we're thinking we should go forward. There are learning lessons, but that's also part of that journey. I think same learning lessons apply today when you look at the past 2 months, what the market sentiment has done. There's learning lessons there too, because you have too much illiquid in investment side. That's hard to be agile and with your treasury. At the same time, like I said, there's also higher conviction plays in there that we do believe are going to do really well in the future, and that's been the massive focus throughout, I'd say, the past 2+ years already. If you look at how many tickets we've deployed, and what that looks like, I would say past year and a half have been very slow, but higher conviction bets.
Okay.
And that's where, now in the state of the Web3 gaming, makes sense. And that's also where the whole AI side came from, with our investment in Aether, for example. And that just shows that you do still have, the flexibility to move towards an additional direction as well. Because like I said, you don't want to put your eggs in one basket. But it also means that you take those learning lessons, you start to apply them, and you want to continuously do better, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And I'm probably not got the figures exactly right, but it's still sort of, to my mind, sort of quite surprising that I think your treasury is still about sort of $250 million worth, and that doesn't include your own what are now Beam tokens, which obviously you have a fairly sizable chunk of. And I think even as well, there's a lot of the NFTs which are very illiquid. I think you're quite conservative in how you deal with those sort of assets. So the 230 or whatever million dollars is actually quite a conservative sort of accounting sort of balance, which is.
Yeah, in a way it is. I think, like I said, part of it is also illiquid. So I think next treasury report, depending on what the market does, we will see lower numbers. Obviously, I mean across the board, I think altcoins have lost like 40% plus throughout the past 2 months, which is pretty steep. But future-wise, like you said, we do aim to be conservative. We do want to maintain a healthy amount of stable coins. We do want to maintain a healthy number of liquid positions, etc. And that requires rebalancing. It requires taking a look at the market, but it also looks at again, where do you believe that the market is going? And that's also why the venture funds that we announced to be in Abu Dhabi that we'll be raising funds for also feels like a natural flow towards the future.
Yeah. Um, we'll get on to the sort of the Beam Foundation and the fund later on, but I want to sort of go back in time and try and, at least in my head, do it sort of chronologically. Around that time, you were also started to get involved in game development. So it was first an NFT project called Edenhorde, which is actually quite a nice sort of interactive, sort of very light, but very sort of blockchain. So you sort of it was sort of a story about the sort of sort of universe and giving you the backstory. But there was little sort of NFT stuff, so it would drop NFTs and then you could sort of swap those NFTs out and get other NFTs, and it wasn't great shakes, but it was sort of quite a pleasant experience. So and then you moved on to use those NFTs in a card game, which I'm not quite sure you're still doing, but it seems to me that you sort of guys have taken a bit of a backtrack from obviously developing sort of games yourself. So is that just one of these sort of learning experiences, and that was sort of fine at the time, but as you go on, you sort of go, well, we don't really need to be making games, plenty of other people making games, or how did that decision make?
Yeah, I think from day one we never intended to, as our core team, develop games per se. But as we became more and more involved in Web3 gaming, and you are starting to build infra, you also want a playground where you can test your technology. You can really, sky's the limit when it comes to experimenting with the technology and customization and tooling, etc. Edenhorde was a great opportunity for us to not just see what it's like to launch such a project, have that lore with Eclipse, indeed the card game, figure out, okay, how can Beam Tech play a role in there. Same counts for the co-launch studio behind Forgotten Playland, which is basically a Mario Party's minigame style title. There is, room for a lot of experimentation. Forgotten Playland obviously has its own studio. It's, has a full core team. Eclipse, Edenhorde was more of an in-house thing. We don't intend to become a game developer. We do intend to be a leading player when it comes to indeed infrastructure, making sure that when you take a title like Xtreme is a good example. It's this mobile bike racing game that people might know from 2009 onwards to today. A huge amount of players, and they're coming with a Web3 title as well. And we've been working with them from the beginning to figure out, okay, what is that Web3 aspect going to look for your title? And when you think about a studio that is, located in the US, you have to deal with regulatory side of things. You have to deal with, in this case, top-notch technology, because it is, not just a small studio. It's a big studio with a big title that wants to make sure everything works. It's a massive opportunity there too to figure out, okay, what is that perfect product suite for you, so that you can take that and those learning lessons, but also that improved tech, to other studios that you're working with, be it Web3 studios, or maybe in the future larger Web2 studios that are coming into Web3 or are Web3 curious. I want to start using that technology. So it's all towards a smoother, onboarding, player experience, using Web3 where it makes sense rather than overdoing it, and applying that. Yeah.
And I guess you've mentioned infrastructure now quite a lot of times. I guess this was sort of the time when I still don't know whether you call it Merit Circle or Beam. I guess the company's now called Beam, is that you've sort of you've certainly rebranded the. You sort of there was a you rebranded the token from MC Merit Circle token to the Beam token, and that was the point at which you first started talking about sort of Beam as a infrastructure play. So that's really, I guess, you're still doing the investment side, but sort of Beam as a gaming infrastructure is sort of the sort of core of what you're doing now. And again, there was lots of sort of movement around infrastructure around that sort of time. So obviously you weren't the only ones doing that. But again, for the gaming side, you were again sort of fairly early. I think it was just when people like Immutable were talking about their ZK EVM and that sort of stuff. But there wasn't. You were sort of 6 months, I think, ahead of a lot of activity sort of last year with games doing their own infrastructure. So again, was that sort of something that you just felt was very natural? Because it's doing investments and making games is one thing, but running infrastructure, I mean, it's not sort of rocket science. There's lots of tools to make a blockchain, but equally making a blockchain is not. I'm sure there's lots of complicated bits to it as well.
Yeah, it did naturally make sense. And for us, like I said, there have been pivots along the way, and they always made sense and they fit our product suite. And in this case with Beam, part of the rebrand was because people still saw us as this early guild, the Merit Circle was, but that was, like I said, we scaled that down. That we hadn't been doing that for like over 1.5 years. But when you would knock on certain doors, they would still not be interested because they saw you as this guild. Whereas when we rebranded to Beam, we actually saw a lot of doors open up that didn't open before, simply because of a name change. And ever since we changed the name to Beam, token to Beam, I would say that's been really pivotal for our growth. And when it comes to the infrastructure side, like I said, we've been working with a lot of studios throughout the past few years. And those are very small studios. There are larger studios coming in from Web 2. And when you're working with all the studios, you learn about their pain points. You learn about what is it that they really would like to see when it comes to using blockchain technology inside of their game. And to us, at some point, it felt like, okay, we are referring people to different blockchains. We didn't necessarily care where they build. End of the day, developers, they wanted to be fast, cheap, secure, But the one thing that's missing here is they also wanted to work seamlessly in their game. And like you said, we were pretty early when it comes to blockchain gaming infra, because there weren't a lot of blockchains where you could say, hey, I want to have Web3 aspects in my game, but I don't want to have to sign transactions for XYZ. I don't want to have to log in with a wallet, etc. I just want to have social login. I just want to have in-game buying and selling of items, things like that. That makes sense for gamers that just want to play a game. And when you learn about those things and you actually have the direct connections with studios to work with them to build their product suite that they want, then it makes a lot of sense. And that's how this whole infrastructure came to play, where we wanted to be more than just, a player when it came to funding. We actually want to put our brand, our name on the industry that we believe is going to grow. And this felt like, okay, this is the direction that we should take if we want to do that.
And I guess it was sort of interesting from a token point of view, where when you were Merit Circle, it was sort of quite easy to go, well, this is the market cap of the token, this is their treasury, and you could do some sort of multiple on that. Whereas as soon as you become, there's other reasons as well, but as soon as you become an infrastructure brand, then it's sort of like that sort of easy comparison, or that comparison becomes less relevant because the infrastructure is obviously more sort of, hopefully more forward looking as a revenue driver. And certainly you saw that with the token, the switch from MC to Beam was multiple X's of price. So at least from that sort of market perspective, it went very well.
Yeah, you go towards a uncharted waters almost. A lot of people, they did see the opportunity as well, and that was nice. We saw, not just token appreciate, but rather we saw, like I said, doors open that previously wouldn't open. We saw new community members come in, and all of that has really just helped us to grow as a project too. So yeah, that's been, like I said, hindsight, it's been an ideal move to rebrand it so people could educate themselves again and look at us again from, a new outside perspective on, okay, what are those guys actually doing today? I know them from, 2021, but are they still doing the same thing, or is this completely different? And that's just helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. But then I guess the flip side of that is, as the whole industry has moved to have now quite a lot of, or some might say, over expansion of gaming block space in general, gaming block space in particular, now sort of Beam, I don't know if you see it like this, but again from the outside, you sort of, Beam is sort of, in competition to some degree with Immutable and Ronin and Treasure and Mythos and all the vast numbers of other sort of blockchains out there. Because, you basically, although people are sometimes going sort of multi-chain, that's still, people tend to be associated with at least we're going live on this one to begin with. So have you sort of found that sort of experience? Because I guess to a degree you end up having to give more grants or give better terms or whatever.
So that's what a lot of blockchains do, right? They throw cash grants at studios hoping that they will build and stay on their chain, and that's something that we've not been doing from the get-go. I mean, we do want to help when it comes to user acquisition, when it comes to exposure, marketing, etc. We're not just, and we're very transparent about that, we're not just going to give you cash to build our own chain. And the reason is very simple. If you do that, and let's say you have a 1 year clause in terms of how you have to build on my blockchain in 1 year from now, they're going to knock on your door in 1 year asking for more money again, or they will go to another chain. Whereas what I mentioned earlier, we want to work with studios that are actually here for good reasons, for the long run, and they're here because they want to have better technology than they can find elsewhere. And I think that mainly comes down to customization and figuring out, okay, what is that blockchain experience going to look like in your game, and how can we help beyond just that. We're very approachable. I think that's feedback that we've gotten from a lot of studios. But yeah, I would lie if I say that we don't see that, as kind of a threat. But one thing we also communicated, and I don't know if you've seen this, but we also have Sphere, our NFT marketplace, for example, running on the Immutable CK EVM. And from the beginning, we also said the Avalanche subnet, basically, it's now transitioning into the L1, but the Avalanche subnet allowed us to build an ecosystem that is basically a playground when it comes to tooling. We can experiment with our tech, we can learn from it, improve on it, etc. But the tech stack, in essence, is chain agnostic. And so that's why part of it is deployed on Immutable CK EVM, part of it is going to be deployed on Sophon. And we always said we want to be where the games are and where the gamers are. So if we see a chain that wants to work with us where there's massive, a number of studios or players, well, we're open to work with them. And right now that's been Immutable with the CK EVM. We have Sophon, like I said. We're also strategic in terms of, how would that look like? Because we don't want to just be living on every chain and kind of spread ourselves too thin. But working with them has been very nice. It's very nice to also work with studios on the marketplace side of things. And that's the nice thing when you have a broader product suite. You don't have to deploy everything on every single chain. But with the marketplace, for example, on Immutable, you also generate transaction fees, right? So there's a lot of flexibility there too, where we don't need everyone on our chain. We're happy to work with you. Obviously, we'd love for that to be on our chain because we can work even closer. But on our chains, we'd be down to work with you too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's the difference, I would say, from a lot of different blockchains that are out there.
Yeah. So we've been sort of talking historically, and I guess in abstract terms, maybe be a bit more specific now. So for people who are sort of interested in what's going on with Beam, what are can you throw out some sort of titles that people should be checking out in terms of actual games? Because that's what I guess that's where the thing wins or fails is the quality of the product.
Absolutely. Yeah, so depending on which country you're in, I would say a mobile download, try Xtreme Freedom. The bike racing game, it takes you with nostalgia just back in time, but I think this new title actually is really fun. It's been one of the few Web3 games where I actually would find myself on holiday just every evening playing on my phone and going back to it naturally. Mm-hmm. Whereas with a lot of Web3 titles, I would play them for a few days and then kind of naturally it fades away. I like that game a lot. A little bit biased here, but Forgotten Playland has their Epic Game Store launch coming up. It's a Mario Party style game. I generally feel that game, graphic wise, look and feel, but also how it plays, is of very high quality. And I think that now that it is starting to embed also Web3 elements and whatnot, it's a really fun game that people should check out. There is Rumble Arcade, which is one of the favorites among our team, where on team offsites we'd be playing that a lot, which you can play both on PC and mobile. It's a very casual game, so you basically have a squad builder that you're building. You go and fight against shadow players, so the real players that build the squad at that stage, but they don't have to be online at that time to fight against you because it's an auto battler. And that's a really nice experience for me too, because a lot of Web3 titles struggle when it comes to online gameplay because there's not a lot of players online. But if you have this shadow player tactic where people don't have to be online at the time that you fight against them, that's a really nice fit, right? Nice way to overcome that obstacle. And I would say, honestly, just check out hub.onbeam.com. We have a game content exploration platform, I would say, where you can find the games with a tag that has on Beam. You'll be able to find any game that is building on Beam. And yeah, try out the ones that are live, I would say.
Good. Okay, so the final thing, and I guess this is sort of what you were sort of what you mentioned earlier and sort of building up was this sort of we spoke about how sort of Merit Circle and then Beam were doing investment sort of on their own level, but you're sort of moving up, I guess, to the next scale of sort of, I guess, not that you weren't professional before, but a sort of more professional sort of venture type approach now with the with the sort of with the sort of organisation, and that's is it live yet, or you sort of announced it and you're sort of raising money?
We've announced
based in
it.
Dubai and Abu Dhabi, isn't it?
Abu Dhabi, yeah, Abu Dhabi indeed. Yeah, we've announced it. We put out some Medium posts that you can check out, that you can read and kind of learn about. Okay, what is it that is publicly known so far? But to give you it in a nutshell, when it comes to starting that, there indeed has to be fundraised still. You're dealing with obviously regulatory side of things, which takes time. You have to deal with getting the license, etc. So a large portion of that is done. It's just a matter of, I would say, a lot of paperwork and details that are to be arranged, and then the actual raise. We do intend for that all to happen in 2025. We'll see how soon that is. That's always a question when it comes to those things. But the path is forward is very clear. So it is, gaming funds, but also will also, dip its toes into the AI side that I talked about. As part of this, there's also going to be an accelerator program where Abu Dhabi right now is seeing a lot of growth when it comes to attracting talent. And with that, there's a lot of Web3 curious studios that are, already building a title, have already built a title, but are looking into how can we, like we talked about, add Web3 elements in our game. And it's very nice for us to be the first one to be doing this there, because we will be the doors that they will be knocking on. And so when it comes to the accelerator program, we're not looking to work with, tens of studios per year. It's rather going to be a smaller number. That we can again learn from, work with, scale with, and hopefully get them indeed to work with Beam on the tech side too. But yeah, that in a nutshell is where things are and how they're looking into the near future.
And I guess from that point of view, for the sort of the narrative we've told, it's very much, it would seem like the obvious next step on the road, because you've done sort of this sort of investment side, and you've sort of, you've done some game stuff, you've obviously done the infrastructure stuff, you've worked with other studios, onboarding them. I mean, this sort of brings all that together, I guess, just in a separate sort of financial vehicle, and obviously, you can bring in additional funding to
exactly
accelerate that sort of group.
Yeah, and I think here too, this is an opportunity to get exposure in both a market, but also studios that previously we wouldn't get in touch with, and so it's. In essence, it's a massive opportunity. I think it's one of the biggest that we've seen to date when it comes to Beam. Very excited about what that's going to look like, but even more excited to see, okay, what are the studios that we'll be working with? What is that AI technology going to do in Web3 gaming, but also gaming in general? And how can we dare to make sure that our name, our brand is going to be, an established brand when it comes to those topics? Yeah.
Final question, which I've been asking everyone at the moment. I've been sort of, I guess, like everyone, been sort of fascinated by this sort of rise of AI, and particularly the AI agents. We've seen, in a typical crypto fashion, we've seen a massive boom and a massive bust over the last sort of 2 months in terms of these agents, because clearly we can, I guess, lots of people can see what they may be doing, but clearly at the moment they're not really doing any of that. But sort of on a more personal basis, how radical do you think sort of this Gen AI in general and AI agents, I guess, in our particular field, how significant are they going to be?
You have AI and then you have the AI agent side of things, right? I think on the AI agent side in crypto right now, you see a lot of experimentation, but it's also a lot of wrappers around ChatGPT style, bots. I think the real innovation is yet to be seen. But when you do think AI in general, I think it has a massive impact, and it's going to have a massive impact on gaming on different levels. It could be from a very good example. I've been playing RuneScape from my childhood. It's been years and years and years. And I think anyone that's played that game and has created many accounts throughout the years gets very bored when you have to do the quests all over again to unlock certain areas or things. With AI, you can make a quest pathing, for example, way more dynamic. You can make quests more personal based on your journey in the game so far, or how you prioritize leveling skills or whatnot. It could be way more fun. You can make conversational dialogues, with characters in the game way more fun. You can look at it from level and map creation point of view. When you talk about user-generated content that we see now a lot, well, we'll see probably a lot of AI-generated content, and we're already seeing that, right? But you might not just know what is AI and what is not. So AI is massive. Even if you think about cloud gaming, for example, I talked about Aether before. If you think about cloud computing, well, cloud gaming, you have a lot of games right now that have very high tech specs. They want to scale worldwide, but people might not be able to play them in countries where it's not normal to have a gaming PC, right? High-end gaming PC. So now with cloud gaming, you can very much play those games too. So there's so many different ways in which AI can be used to scale, to create, to customize. That I personally find it one of the more, well, not just in gaming, probably the most, and that's understating it, most impressive technology that we've seen to date. And I'm very scared but also excited to see where that's going to take us.
Yeah, absolutely. There is that sort of big gap of uncertainty where you're just kind of not quite sure.
Yeah, if you see how fast things went in just this past year, well, let's see where that's in 5 years. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time, Marcus. That was a really great
No worries.
podcast. Going back in history and filling in the gaps, and
absolutely.
Also, the vision forward. So we'll keep an eye on what's been or what will be happening for Beam and all its various entities over 2025.
Yeah, sounds great. I appreciate the invitation once again. If you've listened to this and you enjoyed it, feel free to join us on our channels, either on X or on Telegram. We're here to chat. We're here to share updates. So just stay tuned, I would say.
Cool. Thanks to Marco.
Cool.
Thanks to you guys for watching, listening to the podcast, whoever you are consuming. Remember, every episode we are talking to people who are sort of grappling with all these so many moving parts in blockchain gaming at the moment. So many new technologies that are going to combine in fascinating ways. So do subscribe, don't miss out. We'll see you next time. Oh, wrong button. I'll do it right this time.